Hello, UFC fans. The Big D is back as we head to UFC 301. This weekend, we're going to Rio de Janeiro as the UFC makes another appearance in one of its favorite landing spots. Before I bring in Billy Ward, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page where might be NFL Draft, might be baseball, might be MMA, might be football. You never know what to expect. Also, check out the Big D podcast for the audio listeners, Spotify and Apple. So, joining me, the only guy with more first inning bets and baseball articles than Conor McGregor's got $1 bills in his bank account. ActionNetwork Fantasy Labs, Billy. So, Billy, how many first inning bets have you made this year?
Oh, this year? Well over 100. Hold on. Let me check the record real quick. I got that. Uh, 60 and 49 plus 3 and 3. So 63 and 52, like 115 so far through the first month plus.
That's better than 500. So at least you're winning more than you're losing, right?
Yeah, cashing about a 10% ROI. We were up huge for a while, hit a little down streak. That's just how it goes. It's much like betting on MMA. The variance is pretty crazy with something in such a small time frame. You know, like over the course of a basketball game, we can pretty accurately project how many points someone's going to score. But over the course of one inning of baseball or 15 minutes or less of an MMA fight, like a lot of craziness can happen. So that's what makes these sports fun, though.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because you see games. If like Garrett Cole, Zach Wheeler will pitch and they give up 3 runs in the first inning. I'm like, I didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah, baseball is very tricky, but we just got to be, 5-ish% better than the market to end up ahead. So that's all I'm shooting for.
So the main event, we've got an interesting flyweight battle between Alexandre Pantoja and Steve Erceg. Did I properly pronounce them?
Alexandre Pantoja. You got to brush up on your Portuguese if you're going to be doing UFC content. They're all over the place,
especially this weekend, right? Alexandre Pantoja and Steve Erceg.
Yeah, it's kind of a like we just needed a title fight on this card fight. You know what I mean? Like the fans were not beating down the door demanding a Steve Erceg title shot. But that speaks to how good Pantoja's been because he has multiple wins over Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno. He's beat them both at least twice, a couple of them more than once, or one of them 3 times. And those are the 2 next best guys in the division. So it was kind of like we need a Brazilian champion to defend his belt here in Rio. Don't have a ton of those right now. Now that I think about it, it might just be Pantoja. So, yeah, that's what they went with. Oh, no, Alex Pereira, obviously. But he just fought at UFC 300, so can't get him back. And yeah, so we ended up with this one between him and Steve Erceg. Erceg is currently, according to Tapology, the 10th best flyweight in the world. Very exciting prospect. He's 12-1, 3-0 in the UFC. Kind of just got here. Probably a little bit early for the 28-year-old Erceg, but given how thin flyweight is, he should get another chance at some point in his career, no matter how this one goes. Very good boxer and striker. We all know Pantoja at this point, just relentless grappling. Don't really love the matchup for Erceg, but I also think he should probably be able to avoid being finished or at least finish fast. So, cash games, this is an obvious stack. It's the only 5-round fight. Flyweight fights typically go longer. Everything we're looking for is there. Pantoja just has massive ceiling with his takedowns because he got 8 against Royval last time, 6 against Moreno the fight before that, and then a first-round submission the fight before that. So his grappling gives him quick finish upside, long fight upside, takedown upside, everything we're looking for. You definitely want a ton of Pantoja. I would be willing to pay a little bit more than they have him priced at, so I'll have a ton of him in GPPs as well, but very obvious stack for cash game. Don't mind betting Pantoja minus 185 or so. Gave him out my luck ratings at a better price as well.
Yeah, I feel like Pantoja's just going to be a very tough matchup for Erceg because Erceg's never really fought a grappler. Not just you're not only facing a better grappler, you're facing the best in your division.
Yeah, that's the problem here. And I think the fight the UFC probably wanted to make was Muhammad Mokaev here, not Erceg. Mokaev is similar, young prospect, but few more fights in the UFC. But the timing didn't line up for Mokaev because he had a fairly recent fight, as did Erceg. But Erceg was willing to take this fight on, 2 months' notice or whatever it worked out to be, where Mokaev was not. They might have even fought on the same card. Did they both fight on 294? I got to look that up. But yeah, so I think that's really what happened here is that they wanted Mokaev, wasn't as available. No, they didn't fight on the same card, but very close to each other. Mokaev didn't feel like he'd be ready after fighting somewhat recently, so here we go.
Yeah, especially because when I found doing my research on the
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off. They did. They both picked up wins on the fight night on March 2nd. So only a 2-month turnaround, which is another strike against Erceg here because you'd want more than 2 months of like training specifically for Pantoja, I would think. It's not going to be your typical fight when you're a striker like Erceg. So yeah, another strike against him. This will be fun. Like, I like Erceg. I want to see him do well, but he'll probably bounce back down, have a couple more, and then get another shot at a later date.
Yeah, I'm like, when I saw Erceg was last fought on March 2nd, I'm like, wait a minute, that seems awfully early.
Yeah, it's a quick turnaround, and we know. I mean, sometimes you don't make that quick turnaround, and the UFC doesn't give you another title fight, even though you deserve it. And sometimes, like DDP, you make the right choice. You don't fight on short notice. You end up getting an easier fight 6 months later, and now you're the champion. So it can go either way, obviously. But yeah, Erceg was not willing to wait around for that, which I don't blame him.
If you were Erceg's camp, how do you think you attack How do you think you attack the Brazilian here? I mean, obviously Erceg's going to try and keep this fight standing because he's a boxer by trade. But how does he try and keep the fight standing without hitting the mat so many times?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to lean heavily on like uppercuts and knees and just try to catch Pantoja shooting. But the upside is, this isn't an old school UFC 1 no time limit fight. He'll get 5 chances to be stood up at the start of every round. So I think I wouldn't be coming into this one saying, let's just try to keep this off the mat, score some points. It's like, we got 5 shots at a knockout. Let's try to find him. That's how I would play it. And because these guys are so light, I wouldn't spend any time, if I'm Erceg, on takedown defense in this camp. I would have spent the whole time on just get-ups, right? Like, you're going to take me down. I've accepted that. This is going to happen, but I can scramble back to my feet, hopefully give myself 7, 8, 9, 10 chances standing rather than the 5 I alluded to earlier.
And just hope you get that one big knockout because we've seen one big punch win. I mean, Alex Bahia finished Jamel Hill with one big punch at UFC 300.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's easier said than done against Pantoja, who through 32 professional fights has 0 finishes against him. He's never been finished. So, obviously not the easiest task, but even if you don't get the finish, right, if you land a big punch and have a big moment and then consolidate to a better position, do some damage, that's how you win a round against Pantoja. I don't think he's going to beat him just trying to like play ticky-tack on the outside and hope he doesn't get taken down, because he's going to get taken down. Like, we know it's going to happen. So that would be my game plan, is we spend 2 months just working get-ups. Like, you don't let your back get flat on the mat. Don't let him compress your arms. You got to have frames at all times. Try to scramble up to the fence. Just give yourself as many cracks as you can at trying to land 1 or 2 big shots. Hopefully you get a finish. If not, you at least steal a round or 2 and, make it interesting.
And hopefully you don't get submitted either.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the risk you have to take, right? Like, you can't, there's only so many hours in the day. You're not going to catch this. You're not going to become a better grappler than him in 2 months. But if you focus on one area of that, can you be competitive in that one area? The answer might still be no, but at least there's a chance,
For a title fight especially, how long of a camp would you want, especially up against a great grappler?
I think 8 weeks-ish is normally standard, but then we have to imagine that he didn't come out of his last fight 100% healthy, because he had just gone through a camp before that, just gone through a weight cut. So I don't think it's not a horribly short turnaround, for a young guy, motivated. He doesn't seem like a Conor McGregor type who's partying and getting all out of shape between fights. And he got offered this one pretty quick, so it's not like he was surprised. But yeah, I'd like a couple more weeks of just more recovery between the two fights. And during those weeks, you can work some technique, watch some tape, do some mental work before you hit it hard, because it's the first 5-round fight for him too. So he's probably spent a lot of time on cardio. You can only accomplish so many things in one day, right? Like you can't work hard cardio training and hard technique and refining, your game plan and all this. Like something's got to give. So yeah, just for his sake, I would have liked to see him get a couple more weeks, but it's not a huge factor. It's just one more like slight thing that pushes me towards the Pantoja side.
Especially fighting in Brazil, because seemingly for one reason or another, the judges could be swayed, especially this is a close, this 25-minute fight.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest factor there is just the crowd reacts so heavily to their hometown fighters that the judges kind of subconsciously are like, oh, that must have been a big punch. Everyone lost their mind and started yelling, Poha! So obviously that did something. I don't know that this one is likely to go all 25 minutes. Like, I think it'll be a long-ish fight. But, if you look at the betting markets now, we got the round total set at 3.5. Fight to go to a decision is, let me find it. Fight is plus 110 to go to the distance, so slight favorite to end inside. Just a lot can happen over 25 minutes. I think this one probably hits the championship rounds, but doesn't quite see the judges. And the other part of that is the UFC stacks these cards when they're out of the country, trying to make the hometown guy a favorite anyway. So it's not just the judges, it's the fact that they were probably the better fighter to begin with because the UFC knows what they're doing.
By the way, I am a stats guru. I am a stats guru. Everybody tries to ask me the trivia questions, but today I've got a question for you. Brazilians have fought 10 title fights in Rio. Who've won? Which Brazilians have won those fights?
Brazilians have fought 10 title fights?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to say Anderson Silva, fairly confidently, that among his reign, he got at least one in there.
Yes.
I'm going to say Big Nog, Antonio Nogueira. Did he win one? I believe or did he lose that one? Maybe that one against Mir was in Brazil.
No.
I feel like no Nogueira on the list. But he lost one in Brazil, I believe.
It wouldn't have been in Rio. Might have been in Sao Paulo.
Oh, you're looking at Rio specifically, not anywhere in Brazil? Oh, you're playing really on hard mode. Can you tell me how many of them won title fights in Brazil?
I'll give you a hint. One of them is fighting on this card.
Yeah, I was gonna get to Pantoja. Like, I know that's because I was trying to work my way chronologically from the beginning.
And it's not Pantoja.
Oh, and it's not Pantoja. Who else won a title? Oh, Jose Aldo, obviously. Yeah, that was dumb.
Yeah, Aldo's won 3 title fights in Rio. The other two.
Wait, no, hold on. I'm gonna ask. Don't give me the answer yet. I believe Royce Gracie won a very early UFC tournament, the first one they did in Brazil. Are you counting that? I don't know if it counts as a title or not, but
the other, one's a recently retired female. The other one's going to be hard for you.
Gotcha. No, I don't know. Give me the answers. That's too hard off the top of my head.
I'll give Amanda Nunes and Jessica Andrade.
I was not even thinking of the women's divisions. I should have got Nunes. I would never have got Andrade.
Yeah, Correa, Glover Teixeira, Figueiredo lost title fights in Rio.
Was the Glover lost to Jamal Hill? Yeah, that makes sense. I believe. Or was it an earlier one?
Could have been the. It wouldn't have been the John Jones fight, right?
I don't know. Where was the? I want to say it was when he lost to Jamal Hill. Pretty sure that was in Brazil for Glover. I'm looking right now. UFC 283. Topology not loading. I don't know.
Yep, Rio. Last year.
Yeah, that was in Rio. 283 was in Rio. I remember that one. I do love these Brazil cards, though. The Brazilian fans are awesome. Like, the Uva More chant is amazing. Like, they get excited for every fight. Every fight on this one is a Brazilian versus a not Brazilian, which is also fun.
Honestly, what do you see happening in the main event?
I mean, we talked about the main event. Do you mean the main or the co-main? Did you mean
the main?
What was that?
What do you see happening in the main event?
No, I think Pantoja gets this one done. It'll be his usual lots of takedowns. I would guess kind of a late finish as he just wears Erceg out, with Erceg having never gone 5 rounds, but I wouldn't be surprised with a decision either. Like, from a betting standpoint, kind of Pantoja late is how I expect this to go, just because I think that grappling will wear Erceg out. And Pantoja has so much 5-round experience and has looked great in those so far.
Well, speaking of Brazilian, how about we go from a Brazilian champ to a former Brazilian champ and Jose Aldo now coming back to the UFC after what, two or three boxing exhibitions, taking on Jonathan Martinez at 135. So, what do you think? What kind of Jose Aldo are we going to see? Because it's been a while. It's been a long time since his last UFC fight.
It has, and it's kind of a weird pseudo retirement, right? Like, he was gone for 18 months and he had 3 pro boxing matches in that time. So not really a retirement, despite what he called it. But I'm on the Martinez side here. I think he should probably be a slightly bigger favorite than he is. I just don't, I mean, he's 37 years old, right? Like, this isn't going to be prime Jose Aldo. There's some people out there speculating that maybe his return is because there's no more USADA regulating the UFC and he's getting on that good. But they still do get drug tested, so I don't put too much faith in that. And yeah, just the style Martinez had. He's been on quite the tear lately. Huge leg kicks. He's kind of honestly very Jose Aldo-esque in that he's won 2 fights with leg kick stoppages in the last year or so. I think Martinez controls a fun striking match here. Not a great DFS fight because you need kind of a quick knockout or a bunch of knockdowns from either of them, but they're fairly closely priced, so that'll be a fun one. I kind of like Martinez as a cash game option, but not a great GPP one just because I don't see either guy getting knocked out super fast.
Yeah, I honestly think this is just a better fight to just sit back and watch. I don't think it's a fight to expect a lot of scoring unless somebody is put to sleep early, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, we're probably not going to see a takedown from either guy, so there's that. And then the over 2.5 is like minus 300 or something crazy. So, like, odds makers are expecting a decision. Everything is pointing to this is going to be a fairly high volume, so there'll be decent scores, but not like slate breaking scores from either guy. But I'm going to bet J Mart. I'm pretty sure I already gave that out in my luck ratings this week.
And J Mo got a couple takedowns against Morales, but if you see a takedown in this fight, that will be the first one in forever. I mean, Aldo has got a takedown in about 10 years.
Surrendered. Yeah, I mean, right. And Jonathan Martinez isn't a guy who typically goes for a ton of them, but the best stat on that is Jose Aldo was not taken down by Merab Dvalishvili. Merab tried 16 takedowns and got 0. And he takes down everybody. Like, he took down Henry Cejudo 5 times and couldn't take down Jose Aldo. So, you know, that tells you everything you need to know about Jose's takedown defense.
But honestly, I mean, do you think Jose Aldo's got anything left? I mean, yeah, he's fighting in Rio, but why would he come back after what, a year and a half plus off?
Because of a paycheck. Because they're gonna pay him a decent amount of money to do so. Like, he got out, he got some good cash ins boxing because we all know how that goes. And the UFC is like, oh, okay, well, we want you back. So, yeah. I mean, they're trying to have Brazilian fighters for Brazilian cards like this. They need a guy like Jose Aldo. So, yeah, I mean, it's that simple, I think.
Maybe more name than stylistically what he's got left in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not like he's been horrible either. Like he would won 3 in a row before fighting Merab. That was like a number 1 contender fight. It was kind of like, one last crack at the belt possibly if he wins that one. Not that he's young, but he's still quote unquote only 37, so he's not one of these guys into their 40s. Like, I don't think he's going to be horrible by any stretch. I just think, J Mart's coming into his prime is a stylistic challenge for Aldo, just given the height and the length and how well he uses his leg kicks, because that was historically Aldo's thing. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a good fight for Martinez. I'm impressed by the growth I've seen out of him.
Yeah. Maybe you pick the over on leg kicks in this fight.
Yeah, you would imagine a lot, although Aldo kind of got away from it in recent fights. Like it hasn't been as big of a part of his game as it used to be. So I don't think it's going to be like some absurd amount, but there's going to be some for sure.
Well, then what else do you see on the rest of the card? Because based on what I'm seeing a Brazilian fighting somebody else on every single fight.
Yeah, and a lot of them are fairly heavy favorites, like Michel Pereira versus Ihor Potieria. Pereira has won I want to say 6 in a row. Looks great coming up at middleweight. Potieria dropped down to middleweight from 205. So it's a little bit of an interesting storyline because Pereira was fighting 170 until he missed weight against Stephen Thompson and started that whole thing. But then he came up to 85 and he has needed 2 minutes and 7 seconds to pick up 2 knockouts. So the power has translated, to say the least. Ihor looked god-awful against everyone other than 900-year-old Shogun Rua, which was also in Rio, and people didn't love that. And then looked okay in one fight against Robert Bricksick, who is a UFC newcomer. Other than that, has just looked like absolute trash in all of his fights. So if you can afford Michel Pereira for DFS, I think he's got a massive ceiling. Caio Bahaio against Paul Craig. We kind of know Paul Craig at this point. He's going to take a terrible double leg. When it doesn't work, he's going to just kind of flop back and hope you join him in his guard. And you're going to say no and make him get up. And then we'll do that 50 times and see what happens. The only thing, my only slight interest here is maybe Caio grapples with him. Caio's a very good grappler. Those fighting nerd guys like to do that kind of stuff. The fan in me just wants Caio. I'm like, just follow him down. Follow him down. Let's see what happens. This will be fun. But if I'm Caio's corner team, whatever, I'm like, why? He can't take you down. Just make him stand up. You're going to knock him out easy. So there's that. That'll be a fun fight. Again, you can't play him and Michel and Vitor Petrino all at 9,400 or higher. So you got to make some choices. I think Pereira is probably my first choice. I like Petrino in this spot against Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith, another guy getting up in there in age, hasn't looked great lately. His only win since 2021 was a split decision over Ryan Spann. He's been knocked out twice since then. But Petrino, he just fought 2 months ago, and just the activity level out of him was so bad. He didn't seem to have any interest in finishing Tyson Pedro. He got 3 takedowns, 27 significant strikes, a lot of ground control. That's not enough if you're going to spend 9,400 for him. I don't know why, if you can't do more against Vitor or against Tyson Pedro, you're all of a sudden going to do it to Anthony Smith. So don't love Petrino there either. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun card. A couple of the non-Brazilian favorites, this one, I don't know how to say, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time. But Mikbatek Oralbi against Elves Brenner looks like just the next, Eastern European, Dagestani, whatever. Kyrgyzstan. I don't even know that's a real place. Anyway, looks like a mauler. Just the next, Caucasus Mountain region Muslim fighter who's going to come and destroy everyone. So to get him at 9,000, kind of like that. Really like Mauricio Ruffy at 8,400 for GPPs. He's fighting Jamie Malarkey. Ruffy has won every single one of his professional fights by knockout. Or maybe I think it's all 9 of his wins. And Malarkey just looks like he has no chin left. So that'll be all 9. All 10 of his fights have ended by knockout. Somebody gets knocked out when Mauricio Ruffy fights. And Malarkey has been knocked out now 3 times in the UFC, but twice in the last less than a year. So that's not great either.
Yeah, I feel like Malarkey might need a little luck, Malarkey to avoid the canvas.
Yeah, I mean, and he's talented and he's good at a lot of things, but if all of a sudden you just have that off button on your chin, a lot of that other stuff doesn't really matter.
Yeah, honestly, I'm looking at some of these contests. I mean, the GPPs, I like the GPPs this weekend, but the cash games are like, where are all cash games? Where are double ups?
They're just not named single entry. They're still there. You just have to look through and look for the ones with the
No,
little guaranteed logo on there. So they're just
yeah,
playing with how they list them. It's not really
I
anything
see,
different. They're still single entry cash games.
I see like 11 entries in there, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, the $50 it seems like have a max of 22. They're doing more smaller contests, which I don't love because then all it takes is like, 3 or 4 McLovins or whatever in there, and you're not winning anything. Or you just beat them, which I shouldn't. Also, it's probably the ideal way. But yeah, the $1 has 229 single entry. Like they've got a lot of those. It's just they're not entitled single entry double up for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm like, why are the contests like so much smaller than they've been?
Yeah, it's because it's not UFC 300. This is not a card that we're all super excited about. It's fun, and I like all the Brazil cards just because the fans make it such an event. Like the Uva More chant, which translates to "You're gonna die," and is sung to the tune of "Whoop There It Is" from the early '90s, is the best chant in all of sports. When just a bunch of rabid Brazilians are screaming it at every foreigner, love it. Cannot get enough of that. Plus all the pohas and just general Brazilian excitement really does something to my heart. So I'm looking forward to it just from that side of things.
So from a GPP perspective, obviously we're like the only two knuckleheads crazy enough to play catch. But from a GPP perspective, what are your favorite contests you that you will consider, if not have already entered?
I always do the armbar and the hook. They're like $5 and $8, 10K to first. Those are kind of just for fun. Like they're massive contests. You have to have the optimal to have a chance. And then I usually do like one and kind of a higher dollar single entry. It depends. I haven't looked to see what they offered at the single entry tournaments. It might be different, but yeah, that's my usual. I had been spending some money trying to qualify for the World Championship. Didn't make it this year, and that is now over. So I have to take another look at how I'm going to be approaching my GPP spend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking. There's $100 single entry, $40, $12. I think there's a $5, $333 single entry.
Yeah, a lot of times I'll do like the 40 and the 12. That's been about how I do it, but we'll see. I haven't got there. It depends on how many lineups I make. Like, if there's a couple guys that I'm torn between, like, I could see myself making a bunch of lineups that are the same, but switching between like Caio, Petrino, and Bonfim, just as an example. Not saying that's actually what I'm going to do, but the other 5 are the same, and I'm just trying which one of those guys because I don't have a strong read or something like that. So that depends on how I play it too, because then I might want 3 different single entry contests rather than just 1 or 2.
And then obviously 301 is the main topic this weekend. But I mean, we already know a couple. We already know a couple big fights coming. Makachev fighting Dustin Poirier at 302. Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor. This better not be a replay from like 2015 at UFC 303 in Vegas. And then I believe there will be a pay-per-view in Manchester, England, with the main event happening at like 3 a.m. there. I'm like, I know people in England love the party, but 3 a.m. might be too late there.
Yeah, I don't understand. I wish they did it earlier here. I know it's intended for a US market, but like I'd love an afternoon pay-per-view card. Like, right? I can be done at 8 o'clock or whatever and spend some time with my family and go to bed at a reasonable hour. I'd kill for that. So like, yeah, I'd do it earlier here, but nobody asked me. If they don't put Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad on that card, I'm gonna
I'm
be
gonna
so mad. Like Bilal has deserved this title fight for so long, and they just won't make it. Like if it's not gonna be in Manchester, what are we doing?
Especially because I mean, yeah, stylistically, Leon Edwards might be a boring guy. I mean, all his fights go 25 minutes. I'm just saying, he beat Kamel Usman twice, including one of them with a point deduction for Well, point deduction, like, you might not like Leon Edwards, but
Well, it's not that they don't like Leon Edwards. It's that they don't like Bilal Muhammad, and there's not another obvious welterweight title challenge. They were trying to have Makhachev fight him at UFC 300. They were trying to have Hamzat come back to 170 to fight him at UFC 300. Neither of those guys could do it. They said they offered him 3 fights. Leon Edwards said yes to all of them, and none of those 3 fights were Bilal Muhammad. So if that tells you what the UFC is thinking here.
I mean, I think Leon Edwards wants. I think Leon Edwards want to fight. I think Muhammad want to fight, and I think the whole UFC world will finally want a true answer. Who's the best 170-pound fighter in the world?
Yeah, well, I would imagine they have to, because John Jones isn't going to come fight Tom Aspinall there, and they need a British champion, and that's who they got. So we'll see, though. But we got a few months before that one, so I'm not too worried about it right now.
All right, Billy. So thanks for hopping on. Hopefully, this week's very profitable in terms of betting, first inning bets, GPPs, cash, whatever else you've got up your sleeve.
Thank you. Appreciate it.